In the autumn of 2028, the airwaves and digital feeds across the United States buzzed with the announcement of an unprecedented scientific venture titled the National Dream Trial, sponsored by the government, in collaboration with leading neuroscientists and psychologists. The project promised to delve into the unexplored realms of human consciousness and dreams. The public was captivated by the mysterious and ambitious nature of the experiment, which aimed to advance our understanding of the human psyche through controlled dream induction and observation. The call for volunteers targeted a broad spectrum of the population. Advertisements depicted the trial as the next great adventure into the human mind, promising participants the chance to be at the forefront of a new scientific frontier. The allure was magnified by the offer of a substantial monetary reward upon completion of the trial. This financial incentive, combined with the appeal of contributing to groundbreaking research, led thousands to apply, each hopeful to be among the chosen few. Applicants were required to undergo a rigorous selection process that included psychological evaluations, health screenings, and interviews. The criteria were stringent, seeking individuals who were not only physically and mentally healthy, but also demonstrated a high susceptibility to vivid dreaming. The selection process was shrouded in secrecy, with each stage designed to filter out all but the most suitable candidates for the experiment's needs. Among the hopefuls was Elena, a graduate student in cognitive psychology, who saw the trial as a perfect opportunity to expand her thesis on dream analysis. Her academic background and keen interest in the subject had prepared her well for the battery of assessments during the selection. She, like many others, was drawn not only by the monetary compensation, but also by the potential academic accolades that could follow a successful participation in such a high-profile project. As the selection process drew to a close, the community of applicants buzzed with anticipation and speculation. Online forums and social networks were awash with discussions and theories about the nature of the experiments and the possible implications of the research. Some envisioned it as a step towards harnessing the power of dreams for therapeutic purposes, while others speculated about more exotic outcomes, such as the ability to record and replay dreams or even share them with others. Finally, after months of waiting and speculation, 200 individuals received the golden email, an official invitation to join the National Dream Trial. The message congratulated them on their selection and provided details about the next steps. Recipients were instructed to prepare for a 6-month stay at a specialized research facility located in the remote Nevada desert, designed specifically for the duration of the experiment. The facility, as described in the welcome package, was a state-of-the-art complex equipped with the latest in neural imaging and monitoring technology. It boasted comfortable accommodations, recreational facilities, and a full staff including medical professionals, psychologists, and dream researchers. The document outlined a schedule that balanced dream sessions with ample downtime, assuring participants of their comfort and safety throughout their stay. Elena felt a surge of excitement and a twinge of nervousness as she packed her bags. The reality of what she was about to partake in began to truly sink in. She was about to explore the deepest recesses of her mind, not just in theory but in a very real and practical way. As she headed to the designated meeting point for transport to the facility, she pondered the possibilities that lay ahead. Could they really learn to control and direct the narrative of dreams? What might she discover about herself in such a process? The participants' journey to the Nevada facility was a quiet one, with each person lost in their thoughts about the coming months. As the sun set over the expansive desert horizon, the bus turned onto a private road leading to the Dream Trial facility. The building that emerged from the landscape looked more like a high-tech campus than a research lab, its modern design standing in stark contrast to the barren surroundings. Elena and her fellow participants stepped off the bus, greeted by the project staff, and walked towards the facility that would be their home, their lab, and their testing ground for the next half a year, stepping into a chapter of their lives that none could have fully anticipated. As the bus carrying the 200 chosen participants approached the remote, high-security compound nestled deep in the Nevada desert, the structure that emerged was both imposing and architecturally advanced. The facility, surrounded by nothing but the vast, stark landscape, appeared as a beacon of modernity in the wilderness. It was here, isolated from the external world, that the participants would embark on their journey into the depths of human consciousness. Upon arrival, the group was greeted by Dr. Susan Clark, the head researcher of the National Dream Trial. Dr. Clark was a leading figure in neurology and psychology, known for her pioneering work on brain-computer interfaces. With a reassuring smile, she welcomed the participants, acknowledging the great leap of trust and curiosity that brought them to this point. "Here at the Dream Research Facility," Dr. Clark began, "you are not merely subjects but partners in a groundbreaking exploration of the dream state." The participants were led through the main entrance into a large atrium that doubled as a meeting area. The walls were adorned with abstract art that seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, mirroring the fluid nature of dreams. Large screens displayed serene landscapes that shifted slowly, designed to instill a sense of calm. It was a stark contrast to the barren desert outside, a reminder of the carefully controlled environment they had entered. Each participant was assigned a personal liaison officer, responsible for ensuring their comfort and addressing any concerns during their stay. The facility was not just a lab, but a fully functioning residential complex equipped with amenities that rivaled a luxury resort. There was a fitness center, an indoor pool, and even a small cinema room. The aim was clear: to keep the participants as relaxed and mentally prepared as possible for the trials ahead. After a brief orientation session where safety protocols and daily schedules were discussed, the group was taken on a tour of the facility. The heart of the complex was the Dream Lab, a large room filled with the neural interface devices that were central to the experiment. These machines, resembling high-tech reclining chairs, were equipped with a myriad of sensors and electrodes, all designed to monitor and manipulate brain activity during sleep. Dr. Clark explained how these devices worked. "These chairs," she pointed out, "are not only capable of recording your dreams with unprecedented clarity, but also subtly influencing the direction they take. Our technology can induce specific dream scenarios, allowing us to observe your reactions and gather data on how different themes and narratives affect your emotions and neurological responses." As the sun set on their first day, participants were shown to their rooms. The accommodations were minimalist but comfortable, designed to promote relaxation and ease the mind. The rooms featured large windows with views of the desert landscape, walls that could change color to suit mood preferences, and a personal workstation for journaling and reflection. Elena settled into her room, her mind racing with both excitement and a hint of apprehension. She was particularly intrigued by the neural interface device that stood at the center of her room. It was here that she would spend many hours in induced sleep, exploring the landscapes of her own subconscious. As she unpacked, her thoughts wandered to the possibilities of what she might discover about herself. What secrets did her dreams hold? What hidden fears or desires would emerge in the controlled dreamscapes created by the researchers? That evening, the participants gathered in the dining hall for their first meal together. The atmosphere was abuzz with conversations about the potential of the experiment. Some discussed their hopes for what they might discover about their own minds, while others speculated about the broader implications of such research. Could this technology eventually be used for therapeutic purposes, or even for entertainment? As dinner concluded, Dr. Clark stood to address the group once more. "Tonight," she said, "you will have your first session in the Dream Lab. While we will start with non-invasive observation to baseline your natural dreaming state, soon we will begin the active phase of our experiment. Remember, Each of you has the potential to contribute uniquely to our understanding of the human mind. The group retired early in preparation for their first night in the dream lab. Lying in the neural interface chair, Elena felt a mix of nervous energy and profound curiosity. As the technicians made their final checks and the sensors connected with her neural pathways, her last conscious thought was a hopeful wish to uncover something truly remarkable, not just about dreams, but about the essence of human experience itself. The evening air was thick with anticipation as Elena and the other participants prepared for their inaugural session in the Dream Lab. The facility buzzed with a subtle energy as technicians moved efficiently about, calibrating equipment and making final adjustments. The participants, each reclined in their own high-tech chair, were arrayed in a semicircular pattern around the central monitoring station, where Dr. Clark and her team of researchers kept a vigilant watch. The soft hum of machinery filled the room as the neural interfaces were activated. Elena felt a slight tingling sensation across her scalp as the electrodes connected deeper with her neural pathways. Dr. Clark's voice came through a speaker next to each chair, her tone calm and reassuring. "You are about to embark on a journey into your subconscious," she explained. "Remember, everything you experience is a creation of your own mind. Let your thoughts drift freely, and allow the dream to take shape naturally." As the lights dimmed, a gentle wave of drowsiness washed over Elena. The technology was designed to guide the brain into a state of rapid eye movement, REM, sleep quickly and smoothly. Within minutes, Elena felt herself slipping into the depths of her consciousness, crossing the threshold into the dream world. Her first awareness in the dream was of color, vivid and saturated, more intense than anything in the waking world. She found herself standing in a lush garden, the air fragrant with the scent of blooming flowers. The garden was surreal, a tapestry of plants that seemed to pulse with life, their colors shifting and blending in ways that defied earthly biology. As she wandered through this dreamscape, Elena discovered that she could control her movement and explore at will, a clear indication of lucid dreaming facilitated by the neural interface. The environment responded to her thoughts and emotions, changing subtly to reflect her inner state. When she felt a surge of happiness, the sky above turned a brighter shade of blue, and the flowers swayed as if dancing to an unheard melody. However, the dream soon took a turn. The path led her deeper into the garden, where the flora grew wilder and more chaotic. The air grew denser, and the path narrowed. Elena felt a twinge of anxiety, which manifested immediately in her surroundings. The sky darkened, and a low rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. She realized that the dream was reacting not just to her deliberate thoughts, but also to her subconscious fears. The garden transformed into a forest, thick with overgrown trees and shadowed paths. The beauty of the place gave way to a sense of foreboding. Elena tried to steer the dream toward a lighter, more peaceful setting, but found that her ability to control the environment was waning. It seemed as if the dream had a will of its own, delving into the darker corners of her mind. From the shadows emerged figures, shadowy, indistinct forms that seemed to watch her from a distance. As she attempted to approach them, they retreated further into the forest, always just out of clear sight. The sensation of being watched was unnerving, and her heart raced as she navigated the increasingly hostile terrain. Back in the lab, Dr. Clark monitored Elena's physiological responses. Her increased heart rate, rapid breathing, and the heightened activity in certain brain regions were all indicators of distress. Increase the stabilization parameters, Dr. Clark instructed her team, seeking to smooth out the intense fluctuations in Elena's emotional state without abruptly waking her. As the parameters adjusted, Elena found the ominous atmosphere of the forest beginning to dissipate. Light filtered through the trees, and the path widened again, leading her back towards the garden. The shadowy figures vanished, and a sense of calm returned. She took a deep breath, the floral scent grounding her as she regained control. When Elena awoke, she was disoriented for a moment, the remnants of the dream clinging to her like a second skin. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light of the lab, she saw Dr. Clark approaching with a warm, if somewhat clinical, smile. "How do you feel, Elena?" Dr. Clark asked, her voice tinged with both professional curiosity and genuine concern. Elena paused, collecting her thoughts. It was incredible at first, so vivid. But then it became terrifying. It felt like the dream was pulling me into my own fears. Dr. Clark nodded, noting down Elena's feedback. "That's quite normal. Dreams are deeply connected to our emotions, our fears and desires. We're here to explore that connection. Remember, this is just the beginning. Each session will help us understand more, and in turn, give you greater control over the dreamscapes." As Elena left the lab, her mind buzzed with the implications of her experience. The power of the mind to create and alter reality was profound, and she was just on the threshold of understanding it. With each night and each dream, she would venture further into this uncharted territory, uncovering more about the deepest layers of her psyche. As the days progressed and the experiment unfolded, a subtle but undeniable shift began to occur within the dream lab at the Nevada facility. What started as a controlled exploration into the enchanting realms of the subconscious slowly morphed into something much more intense and, at times, sinister. The dreamscapes, once vibrant and inviting, took on darker hues, reflecting not just the hidden desires but also the deep-seated fears of the participants. Elena noticed the change during her fourth session. The garden that once welcomed her with its kaleidoscopic colors now seemed overgrown, the flowers wilting and the paths obscured by thorny bushes. The air was heavy, charged with a palpable sense of dread. She realized that the dream was no longer responding to her conscious cues, but was instead drawing from a well of subconscious anxieties. As she ventured deeper into this altered dreamscape, the sound of her own heartbeat loud in her ears, the sky overhead swirled with dark clouds, casting long shadows over the ground. The path led to a dilapidated house, its windows boarded up and the paint peeling. Despite her reluctance, Elena felt an irresistible pull towards the house, as if the dream was compelling her to confront whatever lay inside. Inside the house, the air was stifling, thick with dust and the faint smell of decay. As she moved through the narrow hallway, the floorboards creaking under her weight, she could hear whispers echoing through the rooms, too low to discern but unmistakably voices from her past, distant memories that she had long tried to suppress. Each step brought a flash of scenes from her childhood, each more unsettling than the last. The experiment, Elena realized, was no longer just about exploring the dream world. It was probing the psychological depths of its subjects, testing their emotional resilience by confronting them with their past traumas and fears. This realization hit her like a cold wave, sending shivers down her spine as she stood frozen in the hallway, surrounded by the phantoms of her past. Back in the monitoring room, Dr. Clark and her team watched Elena's vitals spike. The screens displayed rapid eye movement and heightened brain activity indicative of stress. "Let's increase the emotional dampeners slightly," Dr. Clark instructed her technicians. "We need to ensure she doesn't become too distressed. Keep her in the threshold where fear is palpable but manageable." The adjustment was subtle, but Elena felt a slight easing of the oppressive atmosphere around her. She pushed forward, driven by a mix of professional curiosity and a personal challenge to overcome her fears. The house seemed to stretch endlessly, each room leading to another, creating a labyrinth of her own subconscious. In one room, the walls were lined with mirrors, each reflecting not her current self but various stages of her life. As she looked into each mirror, the reflections shifted, showing her moments of joy, pain, success, and failure. It was a vivid representation of her journey through life, laid bare in a way that was both terrifying and enlightening. This session marked a turning point not only for Elena, but for many of the participants. Whispers filled the communal areas of the facility, tales of haunting dreams and emotional revelations. Some spoke of cathartic experiences, while others were visibly shaken, their eyes hollow as they recounted their encounters. The researchers took meticulous notes, their observations revealing as much about human psychology as the technology that enabled such deep exploration. Dr. Clark, while sympathetic to the emotional toll the experiment was taking, remained focused on the scientific goals. "We are on the brink of understanding the deepest workings of the human mind," she would say during her briefings. "This is uncharted territory, and every bit of data is invaluable." However, as the experiment continued, the ethical implications became a topic of heated discussion among the staff. Some argued that they were pushing the participants too hard, venturing into morally gray areas by inducing psychological stress. Others maintained that the participants had consented, fully aware of the potential risks and the nature of the study. For Elena, the dreams had become a nightly journey through her own psyche, each session offering a glimpse into the shadows of her mind. The experience was profoundly personal and, at times, deeply unsettling, but she couldn't deny the fascination that came with it. With each dream, she felt she was learning more about herself than years of introspection could ever reveal. As she prepared for another night in the dream lab, Elena felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. Each session was a descent into the unknown parts of her soul, each revelation a piece of the puzzle that was her identity. She knew things about herself now that she had never dared to confront, and each night, the line between her dreams and reality seemed to blur just a little more. Several weeks into the experiment, the atmosphere in the dream lab had thickened with a palpable tension. Participants were no longer merely subjects of a scientific study. They had become voyagers navigating the treacherous waters of their subconscious. For Elena, each session had deepened her understanding of herself, but also exposed her to her most profound vulnerabilities. It was during these intense periods of introspection and confrontation that she started to piece together the true purpose behind the increasingly disturbing dream scenarios. One evening, after a particularly harrowing session that revisited a troubling episode from her past, Elena lingered in the lab. Pretending to review her dream logs on the communal terminals, she carefully observed the researchers as they analyzed the data streaming in real time from the neural interfaces. Her eyes caught a glimpse of a secured folder left momentarily unattended on Dr. Clark's desk. The label read, "Project Nightshade, Phase 2 Objectives." The name struck her. It was the first time she had seen it associated with the National Dream Trial. Driven by a mix of suspicion and dread, Elena waited for the room to clear before she approached the desk. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the folder, her mind racing with possible explanations for the secretive nature of the documents. Inside, she found a series of files that detailed the experiment's objectives far beyond simple dream manipulation and observation. Project Nightshade was a government-funded initiative to develop techniques for inducing psychological profiles and behaviors through dream manipulation, potentially for use in espionage or psychological warfare. The realization hit Elena like a cold wave. The experiment was not merely a scientific study. It was a test bed for a much larger and more ethically dubious application. The participants, including herself, were unwittingly part of a project that could have profound implications on personal autonomy and privacy. The thought that her innermost fears and memories were being used to hone a tool for manipulation was both frightening and infuriating. Elena copied as much information as she could onto a small USB drive she always carried for her research. As she slipped the folder back onto Dr. Clark's desk, her resolve hardened. She needed to confront Dr. Clark and demand answers. If she didn't get them, she would find another way to expose the truth. The next day, Elena requested a private meeting with Dr. Clark, citing concerns about the experiment's impact on her mental health. In the privacy of Dr. Clark's office, Elena confronted her with the information she had found. Dr. Clark's initial reaction was one of shock, quickly masked by a calm, clinical demeanor. "Elena, you must understand, the broader applications of our research could save lives," Dr. Clark began, her voice steady but her hands betraying a slight tremor. "Imagine being able to condition leaders against making aggressive warlike decisions, or to strengthen the resolve of those suffering from mental afflictions." Elena's response was firm. "By manipulating their deepest fears? By using their personal memories against them? How can you justify that?" The discussion grew heated, with Dr. Clark defending the potential benefits of the research and Elena arguing the ethical implications and the lack of consent from the participants. The meeting ended with a stalemate, Dr. Clark assuring Elena that no harm would come to her or the other participants, and Elena unconvinced and wary. Over the following days, Elena grew increasingly paranoid, aware that her actions had likely not gone unnoticed. She noticed more frequent checks on her by the facility's security team and found herself excluded from several group sessions. The sense of isolation deepened her resolve to expose the project, but also heightened her fear of retribution. Determined to not let the information die with her, Elena reached out to a few participants she trusted, sharing her findings and her plan to expose the project. Together, they started documenting their experiences and collecting any evidence they could without alerting the staff. As Elena prepared for another sleep session, her mind was not on the dreams that awaited her, but on the larger nightmare that the experiment had become. She was no longer just fighting for her sanity. She was fighting for the right to own her thoughts, her fears, and her dreams. The weight of this responsibility pressed down on her, but she knew there was no turning back. She had to bring the dark secrets of Project Nightshade to light, no matter the cost. Elena's discovery of the true intent behind the National Dream Trial had transformed her perception of the experiment. Each session in the Dream Lab, once a frontier of scientific exploration, now felt like an intrusion into her most private sanctum. The strain of maintaining a facade of compliance, while secretly plotting to expose the project, was wearing her down. She knew she needed to act soon. In the weeks that followed, Elena and a small group of trusted participants worked covertly, gathering more evidence of the unethical practices of the experiment. They documented their dreams, recorded conversations with the staff where possible, and collected any paperwork that was left unsecured. Each piece of evidence was meticulously hidden, prepared for the right moment to bring everything to light. However, as their plans progressed, the atmosphere in the facility grew increasingly tense. The staff seemed more alert, and security measures were visibly tightened. Participants' movements were closely monitored, and communications were routinely checked. It was clear that the administration had grown suspicious, likely tipped off by Elena's confrontation with Dr. Clark. One evening, as the group met secretly in the library under the guise of discussing their experiences for a supposed participant-led therapy session, they finalized their plan. They would hack into the facility's mainframe to send their collected evidence to several major media outlets, along with a detailed account of their experiences and the unethical nature of the experiments. The IT skills of one of the participants, Tom, a software developer before joining the trial, would be key to their strategy. The risk was immense. If caught, they faced serious repercussions, possibly even charges of espionage or sabotage. But the moral weight of the situation left them feeling they had no other choice. "It's now or never," Elena stated firmly. "We can't let this continue." What they're doing here will have consequences far beyond these walls. The group decided to execute their plan during the upcoming maintenance night, when the security systems would be partially down for routine checks and updates. This would give Tom the best chance to bypass the remaining security measures. On the night of the operation, the facility's halls were quieter than usual, with most participants already in their rooms, and only minimal staff present. Tom, with the help of another participant, Marcus, made their way to the server room. Using credentials they had acquired from a sympathetic technician, they began the risky process of accessing the mainframe. Meanwhile, Elena and the others created a diversion. They simulated a medical emergency in one of the common areas, drawing the night staff away from the critical areas. The ruse was successful, buying Tom and Marcus the precious minutes they needed. Back in the server room, Tom's hands flew over the keyboard as he navigated through the digital defenses of the facility. Marcus kept watch at the door, communicating quietly with Elena via a hidden earpiece. "Almost there," Tom whispered, his screen reflecting codes and windows flashing by. Finally, the files were uploaded, and the emails were sent. Tom initiated a script that would delay the detection of their breach, hopefully giving them enough time to cover their tracks. Just as they received confirmation that the emails had been sent, Marcus signaled sharply, "We've got to move now. Security's headed this way." The pair quickly wiped down their surfaces for fingerprints and exited the server room, blending into the shadows of the corridor as they made their way back to their rooms. The facility remained oblivious to the breach, at least for the moment. The next morning, the story exploded across the media. Headlines screamed about the ethical violations at the National Dream Trial, sparking public outrage and prompting immediate governmental inquiries. The facility was thrown into chaos, with officials arriving and the participants being quarantined in their rooms. Dr. Clark was summoned to an emergency meeting with government officials, her career and reputation in jeopardy. As the facility buzzed with the arrival of investigators and legal teams, Elena and her group were brought in for questioning. They remained firm, united in their testimony about the events and their reasons for taking action. Despite the personal risks, the relief among the group was palpable. They had exposed a grave injustice, potentially saving countless others from becoming unwitting victims of psychological manipulation. As Elena sat in the interrogation room, she felt a complex mix of fear and pride. She had stood up for what was right, sparking a debate that would likely change the field of psychological research forever. "We did the right thing," she reassured her comrades, as they awaited the next steps in a saga that was far from over. They had ignited a necessary conversation about the ethics of psychological experimentation, one that would resonate in scientific communities and beyond for years to come. The revelation of the National Dream Trial's true intent had sent shockwaves through the facility and beyond, creating a media frenzy and drawing the scrutiny of several government bodies. Within the confines of the once imposing Nevada compound, the participants felt the tremors of their actions as the facility became a ground zero for controversy and investigation. Elena, now seen as the ringleader of the exposé, found herself under intense scrutiny from both the facility's security staff and the investigative teams that had descended upon the site. As the days passed, the initial rush of triumph gave way to a gnawing uncertainty. Legal proceedings seemed imminent, and the atmosphere in the facility grew increasingly oppressive. Participants were confined to their quarters except for meals and strictly monitored social times. Communications with the outside world were curtailed, leaving Elena and her co-conspirators to ponder the consequences of their actions in relative isolation. Amidst this uncertainty, Elena hatched a plan for escape. She knew that if they stayed, their fate would be at the mercy of legal and governmental processes that might not favor their whistleblowing. Their only chance was to break out and bring their story directly to the public and more sympathetic government officials who might protect them. Gathering her group one evening in the guise of a mandatory mental health workshop, Elena laid out her plan. "We're not safe here. As long as we're inside, we're pawns in their game," she explained. Her plan was risky. It involved hacking into the facility's security system to disable electronic locks and surveillance cameras for a short window during the next scheduled maintenance cycle. This would give them enough time to reach the perimeter and cut through the fence using tools they had secretly gathered from maintenance sheds around the compound. Tom, once again, was key to this plan. With his intimate knowledge of the facility's network, gleaned during their previous data breach, he was confident he could create a small window of opportunity. "They'll be watching the digital perimeter closely now," he warned, "but there's always a blind spot." The next few days were a blur of preparation and anxiety. Elena and her group sowed subtle disarray to keep the security staff off balance, misplacing equipment, triggering false alarms at distant points from their intended escape route, and subtly sabotaging surveillance equipment. Each small act was designed to create a pattern of glitches that would mask their final move. On the night of the escape, the facility was quiet, its occupants weary from the relentless media coverage and the probing questions of investigators. At exactly 2:03 a.m., when the guards changed shifts and the system cycled through its maintenance routine, Tom initiated his hack. Lights flickered and doors clicked open as their locks were temporarily disabled. Security cameras swiveled blindly to the ceilings. Moving swiftly and silently, the group navigated through the dimly lit corridors, avoiding the few guards who were not yet aware of the system failure. They reached the outer walls of the facility where Marcus and another participant, using heavy-duty wire cutters, quickly worked through the chain-link fence that surrounded the compound. Just as the last of them was squeezing through the gap, alarms blared into the night. The facility erupted into chaos, lights sweeping across the grounds as guards shouted orders. The escapees sprinted across the desert, the rough terrain uneven underfoot, heading towards a prearranged pickup point where a sympathetic journalist had promised to meet them with transportation. Their flight through the desert was grueling, with the sounds of pursuit echoing behind them. They could hear vehicles starting up and the distant barking of security dogs. But the darkness of the night was on their side, and the rough terrain made the chase difficult for their pursuers. After what felt like hours, they saw the headlights of their rescue vehicle cresting a hill. They piled in, gasping for breath, as the vehicle kicked up a cloud of dust, speeding away from the facility. As they put distance between themselves and the compound, the reality of their situation began to sink in. They had escaped, but they were now fugitives, with uncertain futures and the potential for severe legal repercussions. Yet, there was a profound sense of freedom too, a feeling that they had taken control of their destinies, refusing to be subjects in someone else's experiment. The car ride was mostly silent, each person lost in their thoughts, considering the magnitude of what they had done and what lay ahead. Elena felt a mix of fear and hope. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the desert sky with streaks of gold and pink, she realized that their journey was far from over. It was just beginning. They had stories to tell, truths to reveal, and perhaps most importantly, they had their freedom, an essential first step in the fight to reclaim their lives and identities. The dawn that broke on the morning after their escape bathed the desert in hues of crimson and gold, symbolizing a new beginning for Elena and her fellow escapees. As the van sped away from the confines of the Nevada facility, each mile put between them and their former captors brought a mix of relief and apprehension. They were free from the immediate threats of the experiment, but stepped into a world of uncertainty and potential danger. Their destination was a secluded safe house arranged by the sympathetic journalist who had helped them escape. It was a modest cabin tucked away in the Sierra Nevada mountains, offering a temporary haven as they planned their next moves. Here, amidst the tranquil solitude of nature, the gravity of their actions and the road ahead began to sink in. Elena gathered the group in the living room of the cabin, where maps, laptops, and various documents were spread out on a large wooden table. "We've made it this far, but our journey isn't over," she started, her voice steady despite the fatigue evident in her eyes. "We've exposed the project, but we need to ensure that the truth reaches as many people as possible and that it's understood correctly. We also need to secure legal protection to safeguard us against any retaliations." The group agreed that their immediate priority was to contact civil rights lawyers and organizations that could offer legal aid and advocacy. They also planned to compile all their evidence and personal testimonies into a comprehensive report that could be distributed to media outlets, governmental agencies, and international human rights forums. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly. Tom and Marcus focused on setting up secure communication channels and safeguarding their data, while Elena and the others drafted detailed accounts of their experiences. They documented everything from the initial allure of the experiment to the chilling realizations of its true purposes and the psychological toll it took on them. Once their dossier was prepared, they reached out to major media organizations and scheduled a series of clandestine meetings with journalists renowned for their integrity and courage in exposing government malpractices. The response was overwhelming. The story of the National Dream Trial resonated deeply with a public already wary of overreach in surveillance and scientific ethics. Simultaneously, Elena made contact with a prominent civil rights attorney who was shocked by the details of the case and eager to represent them. Legal strategies were discussed, focusing on the protection of the participants as whistleblowers and exposing the legal gray areas the experiment had exploited. As their story broke in the media, becoming a major headline across the nation, public outrage grew. Forums and social media were abuzz with debates about the implications of such experiments on personal freedoms and the ethical boundaries of scientific research. The government was forced to respond, initiating a thorough investigation into the conduct of the experiment and the oversight failures that had allowed it to proceed under such secretive and unethical conditions. Amidst this whirlwind of media and legal activity, Elena found a moment of quiet one evening, looking out over the mountains. The weight of the past weeks, the intensity of their escape, and the relentless pace of their current efforts had scarcely given her a chance to reflect. The landscape before her, with its vast forests and towering peaks, seemed to echo her turbulent thoughts. She realized then that their actions might have changed the course of scientific ethics and personal rights in ways that were yet to be fully understood. The thought was both daunting and exhilarating. Elena felt a profound responsibility to continue advocating for those changes, to ensure that what they had endured led to significant and lasting impacts. The group's efforts culminated in a congressional hearing where Elena and several others testified about their experiences. The hearing was broadcasted nationally, drawing a massive audience. The participants' poignant testimonies and the detailed evidence they provided painted a stark picture of the moral failures within the National Dream Trial. Following the hearings, legislation was introduced to strengthen oversight on scientific experiments involving human subjects, emphasizing informed consent and ethical boundaries. The public support for these changes was overwhelming, leading to swift legislative action. As the story concluded and the participants began to rebuild their lives, they remained connected by their shared experience. Elena continued her work in psychology, but her focus shifted to advocating for ethical practices in research. She became a well-respected speaker and consultant, driven by a deep-seated commitment to ensuring that the intersection of technology and human rights was navigated with the utmost care and integrity. Looking back on all they had accomplished, Elena felt a mix of sorrow for what had been endured and hope for the future. The battle they had fought was not just for themselves, but for anyone who dared to dream, ensuring that the sanctity of one's mind remained inviolable. As she penned her memoirs, she realized that their struggle had indeed left an indelible mark on the world, one that would guide future generations in the pursuit of knowledge and the protection of the human spirit.